I see the president's position. Hey, if they're going to give us this plane, otherwise taxpayers are going to pay for it. We need a new Air Force One, and they don't have it ready for us. They were supposed to have it ready for us. They don't have it ready for us. If Qatar is willing to give us this plane and it can save us some money, maybe we should do it. Save the people some money.
Far-right MAGA commentator Tomi Lahren was on The Breakfast Club with Charlamagne the God. They talked about a number of issues and topics. It's almost an hour-long interview and conversation. If you want to go to The Breakfast Club's channel, you can watch the whole thing there. But I just wanted to show you a couple of clips. So we're going to take a look at these clips of Tomi Lahren and Charlamagne. I'm going to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
Do you feel like a president should uphold the Constitution?
Oh, absolutely. It's their duty.
Yes. So when you see him on Meet the Press and he's asked that question, President Trump, he's asked that question and he says, I don't know. You can't be happy with that.
Well, to be fair, when he was asked that question, it was regarding illegal immigration and what his administration's abilities are. Now, that's going to end up being decided by the Supreme Court. We don't have those decisions yet. But to say he's just not upholding the Constitution, he's saying, well, the lawyers are going to tell me how far I can go. So I respect him when he says that. He's not saying, nope, I know the answer. He's saying, listen, this is going to play out. Judicially, it's going to play out. Legislatively, it's going to play out. But I'm going to do what I can to protect the sovereignty of our nation and our borders. And we had an invasion in his mind and in my mind, and we have to correct that. And the voters voted largely to correct that. So when he said that about the Constitution, he wasn't saying, I don't know. He was saying, listen, it's going to play out. And I respect that.
There is actual due process language in the Constitution, though.
Yeah. To me, there's a gray area.
Everybody does have the right to due process.
Yeah. To me, there's a gray area there. And it depends on what we're talking about. So the position the president has and my position is this. It's a privilege to be in our country. And there were millions of people who came into our country and they said, I don't want to follow a process to get in, but now I want a different process in order for you to remove me. And what this administration is saying and what many Americans, including myself, feel is, listen, you need to follow our laws. You did not follow our immigration laws. So there's going to be a different process for you than an American citizen. And if two immigration courts say you're gang affiliated, if you've beaten your wife and you have protective orders filed against you, if you're accused of trafficking people around this country, which is a major issue, human trafficking and sex trafficking, then you no longer have the privilege of being in this country. And by the way, you also came in illegally. So the whole due process conversation, that's where I stack up on that. Now, listen, I don't believe people should just be rounded up with, just because they see you and they say, oh, get out of here. But if you came to this country illegally, you are up for deportation. You came here illegally.
Yes, but the Constitution still says you're allowed due process. Now, I'm not even saying that I disagree with, that stance. I'm just saying you still have to abide by what the Constitution says.
But why did nobody take any issue during the Obama administration when he deported 3 million people without that due process of, yes, you're in here illegally. Yes, the court says you're here illegally, but we're going to deport you because you're in the country illegally. There was no extra due process for those 3 million under Obama, and nobody had an issue with it. So now my question is, why now is there another level of due process besides an immigration court saying you're here illegally, you have a notice to be deported?
I've always asked that question, and it's to my knowledge that the people because Obama deported more people than any president ever,
right.
But those people still were deported, via due process. Like they didn't just grab them and say, hey, we're shipping you off to an El Salvador.
No, but an immigration court said, yes, you're up for deportation. But the Obama administration didn't give them this extra due process, or you get a trial, or you get...
But if you go through the courts, that's due process.
Exactly, an immigration court, which that's what President Trump is also doing. It's not just, they've never been in front of an immigration judge.
The guy from Maryland didn't go through through due process.
2 courts actually not only said that he was gang affiliated. The local PD said he's gang affiliated. An informant says he's gang affiliated,
but that has nothing to do with due process. All of that could be true.
But 2 courts already said you're gang affiliated and you're an illegal immigrant. I mean, there's no dispute that he's an illegal immigrant, and there's no dispute that the courts say he's gang affiliated.
But that has nothing to do with his due process. I'm with you, but that has nothing to do with his due process. That just means that he has committed some crimes.
Charlamagne is exactly right here. And Tomi Lahren's argument that she's made a couple of minutes ago where she said, well, the immigrants have broken the law by coming here illegally, so they don't get the same due process as citizens do. That makes no sense. If a citizen robs a bank, they've committed a crime, they're still going to get due process. And she's saying, well, the guy was gang affiliated and he's here illegally. So it's like so if somebody has committed 2 crimes, then they don't get due process anymore. So if an American citizen robs a bank and in the process of robbing the bank, they murder someone, then your due process goes away. I mean, Tomi Lahren's argument, it doesn't make any sense at all. As Charlamagne is saying over and over again, they still get due process whether they're here illegally or not.
But he's still allowed due process. And I think that's where a lot of Democrats are getting caught up in. They're so focused on defending his character or what he may or may not have done, when we should just be talking about the due process that has allowed people within the Constitution.
So do you want him to go in front of another immigration judge then? I guess that's my question, is that he's been in front of immigration judges. He's in the country illegally and has been for many, many years, right? You not only came to this country illegally, but then since then, you have protective orders against you. Your wife says she's scared of you. Your wife's ex-husband said, hey, I'm worried about my kids because my ex-wife is dating a gang member. And you got caught on body cam footage allegedly trafficking people across my state of Tennessee. So at some point, it's like, how many more judges need to say this cat needs to leave? And I would also ask this. There are Americans who are accused of being gang members all the time. And I feel that they get less benefit of the doubt than someone who came to this country illegally. And that should infuriate Americans, that there are people sitting in jail right now who I feel probably get less attention, less advocacy, and they're rotting in jail than someone who came to our country illegally and then continued to break our laws and endanger people. So that's my perspective on it. And I get what you're saying about the due process. I understand
that's literally the only conversation. I'm not saying that he shouldn't even, I'm not saying that he should not be deported. I'm just simply saying he should have to go through due process. That's it. I think that, the people like to keep saying, well, he committed this crime, he committed that crime. That has nothing to do with the due process that he's allowed within the Constitution. What do you think about Donald Trump taking the plane? Constitution also says you can't do that either.
That's another gray area. I'm not a lawyer.
Why is that gray?
Well, because here's the deal. I understand, and I'm not fully saying I even support it. I see the president's position. Hey, if they're going to give us this plane, otherwise taxpayers are going to pay for it. We need a new Air Force One, and they don't have it ready for us. They were supposed to have it ready for us. They don't have it ready for us. If Qatar is willing to give us this plane and it can save us some money, maybe we should do it. Save the people some money. Donald Trump doesn't look at things like a typical politician. He looks at it like maybe your average person would say, hey, you're going to give me this and I don't have to pay for it? Okay, I'll take it. And I understand. There are many people
Constitution prohibits that.
There are many people on my side of the aisle who also agree with you. Like, hey, what are they getting in return? And I need to know that as well. So I'm not saying that I'm just like, yes, take the plane. I would prefer you didn't, but I understand.
Why would you prefer he didn't, Tommy?
I don't want to be beholden to potentially hostile nations in the Middle East.
And it's unconstitutional.
I understand your point on that. I don't know if it is unconstitutional.
It is. The U.S. Constitution prohibits it. It's textbook unconstitutional. All I want, regardless of party, is a president who upholds the Constitution at all times.
Do you feel like President Joe Biden did that?
No, probably not in all cases. But that's why I said, regardless of party, I want a president who upholds the Constitution at all times. I don't think the Constitution should be flexible.
Yeah. Well, there are some on the left that want the Constitution to be flexible when it comes to the Second Amendment and, other parts of the Constitution. So some people say it's a living document. It changes with the times. Other people say, listen, it's the original intention. And I think there are times where we probably agree on different points and disagree on others. I take your point, though, about the plane. I'm not cheering for it. Like, I'll be honest about that. I'm like, hey, if we can avoid that, let's avoid that. Let's just not even go into the gray area. I would prefer that. But I see the president sees it as, let's save some money for the American people. I think he really does care about that. I really do believe that he sees things like a business, and that's his perspective on it. And I think that he appreciates the gesture, but I don't love it.
It's still unconstitutional, and it could be a national security risk.
I understand that. I don't disagree with you on that point.
The plane's probably bugged. It could be a bomb for all we know. I'm not even joking.
I don't disagree with you on that point. I would need to know more as well.
I don't see how any reasonable person wouldn't watch this exchange between Tomi Lahren and Charlamagne the God and not think that the things that Charlamagne is saying are completely reasonable. In terms of the immigration, he's saying, don't even look at what the guy did or his character or whatever. And I think he's right that Democrats in some instances are taking the wrong direction on that, the wrong course. But just say, hey, this is what the Constitution says. Everybody gets due process. The end. That's it. And Tomi Lahren here is saying, well, they say the Constitution is a living document, maybe, blah, blah, blah. But she's saying, oh, we're going to follow the Constitution here for sure, I guess, if it's the Second Amendment. But then, Trump taking the plane and due process for immigrants. Well, that's all up to interpretation. You have your opinion and I have my opinion. In terms of the plane with Donald Trump, let's imagine the tables were turned and Joe Biden took a plane, or Kamala Harris were president now and she were taking a plane. I think Tomi Lahren would have a very different viewpoint on this. But the thing to me that's insane about this is that the right wing's argument, and people like Tomi Lahren, their argument is, well, we're just going to save some money. We need to save money. But on the other hand, Donald Trump is bragging about how he's going to have a $1 trillion defense budget, the biggest we've ever had. We've gotten to 800 billion before, but we've gotten to, whatever, but we've never done a trillion before. And I'm going to have the first $1 trillion defense budget. So we can do that, but we need to save money. We can't take some of the money from that $1 trillion defense budget and buy a new Air Force One. I believe it falls under the Department of Defense. So it just makes no sense. And again, I think Charlamagne is absolutely correct in this instance to say, hey, that is this not worrisome? And she's admitting that it's not the greatest thing in the world. But if the tables were turned and this were President Bernie Sanders receiving this plane, Tomi Lahren's hair would be on fire. And it would. Let me know what you think about all this. Who do you agree with here? Do you agree with Charlamagne the God? Do you agree with Tomi Lahren? Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I am Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.